Tabs can be tricky to a lot of users, but once you master tabs in one application, they get a lot easier in the other programs. Let's start with a brand new document. I'll choose File, New Document, with facing pages off, 8.5 by 11, 1 column, and 1-inch margins. And I'm going to use my Type tool to click and drag and make a text box that covers my entire margins. When I let go, I get the flashing cursor, and I'll hit Command plus or Control plus a few times to zoom in. I'll scoot over so that I could see both the left and the right side of my text box. And I'll type Fun with Tabs. Now here's my first trick for tabs. I want Fun with Tabs left aligned and the date on the right side of this text box. So I'll press Shift Tab. Shift and your Tab key leaves this text left aligned and throws the cursor to the right side of the box. And we'll type in a date, and I'll press Return or Enter, and the cursor is back to left aligned. Now I'm going to cheat and use a double return here, which I rarely do, but I want you to see how to set up tabs from scratch. In fact, it's helpful to see when certain characters have been pressed. So under your Type menu, you could choose Show Hidden Characters, which reveals the invisible or hidden characters in a document, like the spaces with small blue dots. A right-aligned tab is this character, and the returns every time you've pressed Return or Enter. We're going to do a list of just antonyms, the opposites. So we'll start with good, and we'll press Tab once and type bad. And you'll notice this is the invisible or hidden tab character that was pressed. I'll zoom in once more with Command plus or Control plus and attempt to keep this centered. And I'll click after bad and press Return and type yes and hit Tab once and then no. Return, his, press Tab, hers. Return or Enter. On the PC it'll say Enter, on the Mac it will say Return. And then up, tab, down. And we'll finish the list with difficult, tab, easy. Now many people would be tempted when this tab doesn't line up to come back up here and press tab a second time. But if you haven't specified your fonts or sizes up until now, that can actually introduce problems. So I'm going to undo all of those. And we're going to set up tab stops. Before I do, I'll press Return or Enter to leave a blank line that has no tab settings. And I'll highlight from Easy up to Good. From my Type menu, I'll choose Tabs. And the tab ruler comes directly to the top of the box. In fact, if I close that and I were to scroll up a bit and I choose Type and Tabs, it may come up in the middle of the screen. If I scroll back down and leave enough room above my text box, this little magnet on the right will snap the tab ruler perfectly to the top of the box so that when you set your tabs, you could see where it's going in position in the document. So we have a left justified tab, a center justified tab, a right justified tab, or a decimal tab. I'll start with a left justified tab, and in your tab ruler, I'm going to click roughly above 3 inches. The white space here is where you set your tab stops. So 1 click above 3 went perfectly to 3 inches. If you miss, you could simply drag this left or right, or if you want to remove a tab altogether, you would drag it down outside the ruler and it wipes it out. I'm going to click back above 3 inches in the ruler, and all of the text after the tab begins at 3 inches. But I want this to look more balanced. So instead of a left tab, you could try a center tab. If your tab is highlighted in blue, now they all center from 3 inches out to the left and out to the right. But on a list of this style, I prefer the right justified tab so that all the words end at the 3 inches. And in fact, I'm going to drag this over to 4.5, trying to keep it very carefully in this white area and not drag up or down because I may accidentally remove the tab. Now here, these 2 tiny triangles are your left indent and your first line indent. The bottom half is the left indent, the top half is the first line indent. Technically, all of these are first lines because I pressed return or enter after each one. So what I'll do is pull the bottom half of the indent marker in to 1 inch. And when I pull the bottom half, the top will come with it. And that's what I want for this example. I think I'll scoot it over to 1.5 inches. And if I don't want to scoot it, I could just double-click in the middle of the number and type 1.5 and hit return or enter. Now, I'd like dot leaders. Instead of white space between each word, I'm going to click on the tab that I set at 4.5 inches. And in leader, which is empty by default, I will type a period and hit return or enter on my keyboard to see it. And it's that easy to do dot leaders. Instead of white space, it put periods in. But I love that InDesign lets me do more than one character. I can click before and after the leader and put a space in before and after the period. And now when I press return or enter, I get more separated tab styles. This is the way I prefer it. When I finish, I'm going to click back on that last empty line and press return or enter, and I'm going to move my indents back to 0. And now I'll type the word name and press tab once, and you'll notice it kept the leader style, which I don't want here. So I can hit the panel menu on the tab ruler and clear all the tabs. Then I'll press return and type address, and after address, press tab once, press return or enter, and on the blank line, only press tab once, press return or enter, and type phone, and hit tab once. What I'm going to do here is make this a form. And the absolute easiest way to make this a form is simply to highlight this text, and I'll make all the lines end in the same spot, so I'll use a right justified tab, and I'll click above 6.25 inches in the ruler, 6.25. I have to click to get the little arrow indicating I've set a tab. Now all I need to do is type in a leader of an underline. Not a hyphen, but shift and your underline character, and when I press return or enter, all of these lines mathematically end at 6.25 inches. If I want them closer to the right, I simply pick up this little bent arrow and drag it to the end of the text box. And that is my intro to tabs. So we've done a right justified tab, a right aligned tab with a dot leader, and a right aligned tab with an underline instead of white space, perfect for forms.